All right. Okay. So I hope this is actually recording. Okay, it's recording. Okay. So I was talking about um, first when you get your folder ready. So once you open up your folder, you should have this your design, your images, and these other files, right? So
Yes,
you
yes,
have to
yes.
open this up on VS Code, which is your editor. So for some of you, um, you might not have a project running already. All right. Some of you, you might not have a project running already. So what you do is, if you don't have any project running already, you have to open up a folder on your VS Code. So you move to this part, this Explorer, and you move to this, or you go to File, and you go to Open
Sorry,
Folder.
sorry, Mr. Felix.
Yes, sir.
What app are you on right now?
This is VS Code.
VS Code. I don't think I have this on my system.
You don't have a VS Code. You don't have a VS Code.
No, 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 no.
Okay. So is this is not your first class? No? Okay. So basically, to write our code, right, we need an editor to do that. So since you don't have VS Code, let's try this. You should have Notepad. So on your system, come to this search
Yes,
bar
yes.
on the left and write
Okay.
Notepad. Let's because
I have a
you
notepad.
can't. You have a Notepad. Okay, open up your Notepad. Although after this class, you have to install um, Notepad plus plus, so not the normal Notepad.
Okay, no notepad plus plus.
No Notepad plus plus. Okay, so this is what you do. This is what you do, sir. So you go to your browser
Yes, like my
and
assistant.
here you type VS Code.
Okay, I should leave the notepad, right?
Yeah, since you can't find it, so you'll be installing it while I go on with the class, right?
I should just type VS Code.
Yes, just write VS Code on your browser.
VS Code. Nothing. I should not put anything. I should just click it, right?
Just write VS Code and press enter.
Okay.
You should have something like this. You can see my screen, right?
I'm not.
Can you see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay, so you should have something similar to this on your browser. Then you go to
Yes, yes. I'll
download.
download.
You click on download. It seems my network is a bit slow, but you click on download. It should take you to a page where you can download your VS Code from.
They've taken it to a page, but I have different options.
You
Um,
have what?
these are the different options.
Yeah. What are the options you have?
Hold on, let me show you. Here,
Okay, so what system are you? What is it? Microsoft? Is it Windows or Linux or
it's
Mac?
Windows.
Windows. Okay, take that first one. Is it downloading?
Sure, I will. Sure, I will check it out.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, you have to open it up on VS Code. So, how do you open up a folder? You go to File and you choose Open Folder.
I'm waiting for it to download.
Yeah, just follow my steps. When it downloads, you can do it. I'm very sure you know how to use the system already. It shouldn't be very difficult. So once you click on Open Folder, um, you would have this GUI where you can graphically choose the folder that you want to open up on your VS Code.
The
So
folder I
this
dragged out, right?
yes, yes. It should be somewhere on your desktop. So on your desktop, you should see the folder intro to section with drop down.
Yes, yes, I've
So
seen it. I've seen it.
you can select it, you click on it, and then you choose select folder. So immediately you do that, it opens up that folder on your VS Code, and that's all you have to do.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first step. Do I have okay, what is this? Okay, so once you do that, since you open up a folder that has an HTML file in it, you should have a HTML file inside. But I said if it is empty, you have to create your own HTML file. And HTML files can be given whatever name you want to give to it, but the extension ends with .html. So it means if I want to create a new HTML file, I right click on this empty space here, or I choose this first option, new file. So it creates a new file immediately. So I have to give it a name. So let's say I want to give it a name new. So I write new. So this section can be anything, whatever name you want to give to it, but it should be descriptive,
Dot
for somebody to
HTML.
just understand. So after writing it, you end with the extension .html. This is very important. So your editor, which is VS Code, could understand that you want to write HTML codes in this. And then you press enter. Immediately it opens up your before you start, you have to create your HTML boilerplate. And how do you create HTML boilerplate? You create it by holding down Shift and pressing 1 to get your exclamation mark. So once the exclamation mark pops up, you see this option, you just press enter. So it creates this for you, a boilerplate. So it's just like a starting place for your coding. So you don't have to remember that you have to write doc type before HTML, head, and the rest of them. It just saves you the stress of trying to remember this. So you just create it immediately for you, and then you can start writing your codes here. So I explained that doc type here is just there to let us know that we're about to write HTML5 code, right? We're about to write HTML5 code, and that's what doc type is here for. So after that, we have the next tag, which is the HTML. So this is like the parent code of everything we'll be writing. Every code you'll be writing, HTML is the parent code. And as you can see, if I close this up, it should close. Why is this hanging again? I'm sorry. Okay. So if I click on this, it closes. So it means everything is supposed to be between the opening tag, which is this, and the closing tag. So put in mind and take note of those terms, opening tag and closing tag. So the closing tag is identified with this backslash, right? The opening tag doesn't have anything. And I said when you have a tag and you have something else inside that is not the name of the tag, it is considered an attribute. So right now, our HTML tag has an attribute called lang, and the value of the attribute is in. So descriptively, it means the code you're writing is written in English. You can decide to take it off, but there is no need taking it off. All right. So that's what it is. So after that, you have the next tag called the head tag. So this head tag comprises, it takes by default, it comes with the meta tags, these two meta tags and the title tag. All right. So as we continue and progress, we'll be adding more tags to this. So the meta tag, what this does basically is for your SEO. So it can be configured to help clients searching for some queries to be able to find your site very easily. It can be configured for SEO purpose. That's what meta is for. And then the title is when you go to a site, once you visit every site, you get a title at the top. So for this one, you can see my drive, Google Drive. So this is the title. So whatever we edit here, that's what we get on our title. So I'm going to open this up with my lifesaver and wait for it to open. So when it opens, I'll show you where we can find documents. So whatever you put here, the browser will take as the title of your web page. So take notes, the title is different from a heading. It's not a heading. All right. Likewise, this head tag is not a heading. We learned heading tags. We'll get there. So they are different. Okay, they serve different purposes. So once you're done with this head, the next section is the body. So the body is where you'll be writing majority of your code. So okay, our page is ready. So our page is ready. This is our page. For now, it is blank, right? And so if you go to your browser, you can see the parts here, new.html. And if you come here, you see documents, right? So that's the title. So now the body, whatever we write in the body will be displayed between this area of our browser. Okay, so all the tags we'll be learning will be displayed here on it. That's what the body is for. So on no condition should you write your codes, your tags outside the body tag. And like I explained in yesterday's class, it would work, okay, but that is not the correct syntax. That is it. So after that, we went on to talk about the different tags we were using. I think I created a file for this. Yeah, yes, we did. So we went on to talk about the various tags we have. So firstly, we talked about the text tags that we have.
Tag.
Text tags, okay, like tags you use to create text. So, and I said there are basically two tags, the heading tags and then the paragraph tags, right? And the heading tags start from H1 down to H6, with H1 being the biggest and H6 being the smallest of all tags. So on no condition should you have a H7. So from here, we have this to be H1, H2, H3, and the smallest to be
It's
H6. So the biggest is H1. So it is based on the number, right? H1 to be the biggest and H6 the smallest. So it's reducing in size as the number increases. You should take note of that. So H1 to H6 are used to make heading on our browsers. And I gave example from our that we are supposed to design was supposed to code up, right? I said it is obvious that from this design that this should be a heading, right? This should be a heading because of the size and because it gives a heading basically to our website. So that's an example of how you can use a heading tag. And then we went on to the next tag, which is the P tag, is used to write paragraphs. Okay. So basically, what you do is you write your opening tag and your closing tag, and then you write whatever text you want to write inside. So you write whatever text you want to write, and because you've written this between the opening and closing paragraph tag, you've automatically created a paragraph. So if I go to my web page now, I see the paragraph we just created. So you can see the font weight, the difference between the font weight of the paragraph and a heading. They are thicker than a text. So I said these are the two basic text tags we have, H1 to H6 and P. So the heading tags and the paragraph tags are the basic tags we have. And then I went on to talk about tags that you can use to modify your paragraph tags or your heading tags. I talked about the strong. So as you can read from here, it says the strong element represents strong importance, seriousness, or urgency for its content. Basically, that's what it is, right? So it also helps you for SEO purpose, right? So all you and basically for visually, all right, what strong does is that it makes your paragraph bold, and that's why from our web page you can see that this paragraph is different from this one because this one looks bold, while this is just thin as it is. So that's what the strong tag is used for. And then the next one is the EM tag, which is for emphasize, right? So as you can read here, it says the EM element represents stress, emphasis of its content. If you want to read more, you can go to this site. It takes you directly to a web page where you can read about EMs and understand more. All right, that's how you learn to be a programmer, a better programmer. So after the EM, we talked about the B arrow tag, which means break. Okay. So I explained that since you have this, if you decide to give it multiple spaces, all right, and you save your work, you're expecting that okay, let me take this down. So I've taken it down. I'm expecting that I should have some spaces around here before I meet this. But because of HTML, we don't. It still stays on a straight line without anything breaking out, without no spaces. It just considers the first normal space, and then it joins everything, and we call that white spacing in HTML. So something you can use to easily break your paragraphs to different lines is the tag we call the break tag. So and it is different from others in the sense that while others have an opening and closing tag, it's just self-closing on its own. Doesn't have opening and closing tag, and we called it a void tag. So when you see tags that don't have opening and closing, they are called void tags, like this doc type as well, and our meta, they are void tags. So these were the basic tags to talk about making text, and then we moved on to our list items, our list tags. I talked about OL used to create ordered lists, and then inside your OL you have LI to represent each of the items you want. And we said the basic difference between OL and UL is the fact that the OL are numbered. The list items in an OL are numbered, but the ones in UL are dotted. So on ordered lists are dotted, while ordered are numbered. And so if you go to your browser, you see the first one we created with the OL to be numbered from 1 to 3, and then the second set we created with the UL to be dated. So that's the basic difference between the two of them. So that's the these are the tags we use for creating lists in HTML. So immediately after that, we went to the next set of tags, which we called link tags, right? And from the term HTML, which means hypertext markup language, it means a text that does more than a normal text, all right? Text that can link from one place to another, one page to another, one file to another. And so we said we create link tags using the anchor tag, right? So you create link tags with it. So basically, this is how you create it. So you start with your opening tag, your A. So between the opening and the closing, then you put anything you want to, the content you want it to have, right? And I said you can save and go to your browser. But now, let me take this up. So now we have our link down here. You have our link down here. But you can notice that it is just like a normal text. All right. I'm hovering on it and I'm having the text icon cursor on it, right? And this is not what you want. You want to be able to hover on it and see a pointer, which means if you click on it, it can take you to a different site or a different page. And as I hover on this, you can see a link pop up by the bottom right of my screen that says www.google.com. So it means it's supposed to link to that site. All right. So let's make this a link that can go to somewhere. All you have to do is pass in a very important attribute called href. So the href is where you put the path you want your site to go to. And I said use the HTTPS protocol, hypertext transfer protocol. All right, S is there for security, and then you say www.google.com. Okay, so you close off your columns and then you save your work. So now when you go back to your page, you see that is now the color has changed, obviously. So we now have a purple color that is underlined. So this is a link. We'll be able to create a link. So that's the link tags. All right. And we said that there's a basic difference between the other tags we've been learning. The other tags we've been learning, they've been occupying the entire space. And so after each hello world, you have the next one down and down. That they are placed vertically, they are placed in columns. All right. While these links, although we use the same structure, they are placed side by side. And I say the basic difference is that links are inline elements, while the heading tags, the paragraph, lists, items, they are considered block elements. So block elements are elements that occupy the entire width of the screen, while inline elements are those elements that contain just the content, the space its content occupy. So that's the basic difference. And after that, we went to learn um, the last tag, which is the image tag for adding images to our site. And the only difference between image and href is that instead of using href, the basic difference between image and anchor tag is that instead of using href, which is used for link, we make use of source, and then we put in our paths. So for images, you can also use the image and an image online. Okay, you can use the site an image online, but it now requires um, your internet connection for you to be able to see it. So that's just the difference. Otherwise, they are both the same thing. So after that, we went on with our project. So with our project, which we'll be diving into now because we have to start the next phase. And let me open it up quickly. Okay. Okay. So this is the project we're supposed to work on, and we said we wanted to start by making the header parts of this website, right? And I said a website is basically divided into three sections: the header, which is where you have the navigation, the company logo, the sign in and sign out buttons. And after the header, you have the main section. So this part where you have your make remote work and this image is the main section. Then in most websites, you have a footer at the bottom of it. Do I have the site open? No, I don't. Okay, so that's the basic sections of it. And so we went on to create the basic HTML structure using the tags we just learned. We made use of the image, the UL, LI, anchor tags to create our sites. And then we introduced HTML5 syntax tags, which first was the header. And I said is used to create your headers. All right, so it doesn't really add any visual change to your site. It just lets the browser understand your page more. It helps your browser understand it properly. That's whatever you're creating inside here is supposed to be for the header. So that's what the header tag is. And then we created the div as our container tag. So div tags are basically just used to group couple of group of tag separate tags together, and you group them together. So that's what the div is used for. And then the nav tag is used to show a nav. So you can be asking what is the difference between the header and the nav. So while this entire place here is the header, these are the navigations. These are the navigations, are the different navigations, how you navigate from one site to another or one position in a site to another. These are the navigations. So after creating our sites, we had a basic structure which I'm going to open up now on our browser. So this was our structure. Okay, this was the structure we come up with. So we have this place to be our yes, we had this place to be our header. This is the HTML structure. And like I said, HTML on its own is not appealing to the eyes. It is very ugly because it is just the structure. So today we are going to talk about CSS and how we can use CSS to arrange this to look, if not exactly like this, close to this. Okay. So quickly, we're going to dive into CSS and I'm going to introduce some concepts. So, but first, I'm going to talk about how you create a CSS file. So it is similar to the way you create a HTML file. Sorry, let me confirm we are still making this record. Okay, we are. Um, okay, so how do you create a CSS file? So all you do is the same thing. It's either you click here and you choose new file, or you just go directly here I choose file. So the conventional way of creating a CSS file is by naming it style. All right. So once you create something with style, people just see it and they know it's CSS. But otherwise, you can give it whatever name you want to give to it, just like the HTML. But the conventional way of making a CSS is by giving it style. But then the very important thing is that it must end with .css. So this is what lets the editor know that you want to write CSS codes in this and not HTML code or JavaScript code. So immediately you do this, you can save your work and then you have your blank file. Okay, but you're not done. The reason you're not done is this. So after creating your file, it is a separate file from your HTML code. And CSS on its own can't survive. It can't be visual. It has to be connected or linked to a HTML file. So how do you link CSS to HTML? So you go to the HTML file you want to link to the CSS. So right now I want to link index.html, or okay, let me go to third. I want to link I want to link it to index.html. So I come to HTML, index.html, and inside my tag, inside my head tag, I choose and now create a new tag. All right, so we'll be introducing a new tag called link. So when you write link, VS Code does you the favor of bringing out options. You see link, column, atom. The one we want is CSS because we want to create a CSS file. So we choose CSS. Immediately it forms our code for us. So it introduces two attributes, the rel and the href. Right? The rel is just to say this is a CSS file, a style sheet you're trying to create here. That's what rel is for, right? So now href is where we put the paths to our CSS. So by default, it creates this for you. Okay. So we just have to we can leave it like this because they're on the same level. So if this CSS was in a different folder, so you know you have to change this. You have to change the paths here. So Then you can save. So just to test that our CSS is connected to our HTML, I'm going to write some CSS code. So I'm trying to change the background of the body to black. So if it doesn't change, then it means our code is not connected. So it means our code is not connected. So let's go back and see. So go here. So it could be from the parts we gave to it. So let's put a dot slash and save and go back to our code. It still doesn't change. So let's see what could be the problem. Uh, sorry, it's changing. We're on the wrong file. This is the wrong file. This is the correct file, right? Learn certify. So you can see the background changes to black. So to show that our CSS is connected, I'm going to take this off now and explain again. So going back, we have our background white now. So we have successfully created a CSS file and linked it to our HTML. So how does CSS work? The way CSS works is that you choose a particular tag or a particular element you want to edit, and then you change the property of that element you want to edit. So what are properties of this element? Using this H1, you could say the size of this is too big, and so you want to edit the size. So the font size is the property that you want to change. So all you have to do is go to CSS and specify that you want to change the size of this HTML, this H1 code, and I want to change it to maybe you want to reduce it to something else. So for example, let's try to increase this H1. Okay. So how do you do that? Let me split my code. So we have, let's have the index here and the CSS here. So this is our HTML, so we can see. So I want to edit this H1. Okay, and in CSS we can edit contents or elements by their tag name, their class name, and their IDs. We'll do them one after the other. So first, let's start with the tag name. So the tag name for this is H1. Obviously, is a H1 tag. So you come to your CSS and then you say H1 first. So once you write the name of the element you want to change, the next thing is your curly brackets. Take note of the different steps. You start with the name of the tag and then the curly brackets. So it is between these curly brackets you write the properties of the element you want to change. So I said we want to change the size, all right? And how we change sizes in CSS is font size. So VS Code is giving us our options already. So I'm just going to select it, font size. So now you have different sizes. You can decide to use these built-in sizes, but I want to introduce us to the unit CSS used to adjust text. So CSS uses pixel, PX for short. It uses arrow EM or EM. They do almost the same thing, and it uses percentages. All right, so it is based on you. It is your decision which order you want to use. You can use any of them. So I'm going to use the PX for now. So PX is just for pixels. So I want to increase this to, let's say, 40 pixels. So after making a change, you save, and then let's go to our browser and see. So you might not really see it, the difference. All right. So let's go and increase it more to, let's say, 100 pixels. So now you can see how big it is. All right, so we'll be able to change this. So do not worry if you feel like you might not remember all of these properties, because CSS has so many properties that you would have to use. So what you need to understand is that you know what you want to change. you know what should be edited for you to get desired or required outlook, and then you get that. That's how it works, right? So it is based on getting the correct property. So when you know that you want to change this, you can just go to Google and say you want to change the font size of this element. Which property do you use? So, but for now, we've introduced us to the first one that says font size. Okay, so that is the first one. So let's say I want to change the color of this H2, the color of the text itself. So the property we use is color property. Okay. So I no longer have to write it inside here. If I wanted to change the color of this H1, let me just use this place at once. So if I wanted to change the color of this H1, right, I'll still have to write it inside here again. I just come down here and I change the color. So let's say aqua and I save. Okay, so it means all the CSS properties I'm writing between this open and close curly brackets are specifically for H1 tag. Okay, but if I want to change the one for H2, I have to come outside the H1 block and create a new one for H2. So I want to change the color. So I say color and I write red. You can see I'm using the name of the colors right now. We have different ways of giving colors to our CSS. So I'm going here now. So you can see the first one we did is now in aqua color. And then the last, this other part is colored red. So our CSS is working properly for us. So for colors again, if you don't want to use the name of the color directly, there are other ways we can do it. We have ROGB, we have ROGBA, we have hex. So example of ROGB is you write ROGB and then inside here you write a portion of red. RGB is short for red, green, and blue. So you give the color for red, give the color for maybe let's say color property of green, and then you give the color for blue. So it mixes each of the proportions of these colors, and then it adds them there. So for example, let's say we want to change this to RGB. So I don't want red, so I use RGB. So you can already see it's specifying different colors. It's using the names, right? So you can further increase it to maybe let's say 100. For this one, I want to give it maybe 0 and 0. 0 to I think 244. All right. So the more you increase the number, the more. If you start mixing this up, all right, it starts to change your color for you. Can see it starts to change the color for it. So this is RGB. So RGBA is almost similar to this. The only difference is that we introduce the third, should I say the third number, which stands for alpha. So it's just basically for, let's say you want to reduce the how thick the color looks, all right, the opacity or something. That's what RGB is for. And then your hex codes starts with the hash, and then is a combination of either 3 alphabets or 6 alphabets and numbers. So FFF is for white, FFFF is for white as well. So if you mix this up, just writing rubbish here, but if you mix them up, it should give you a number. So these are the different ways we use colors in CSS. All right, I'm just going to comment this out so you know that this is it. So I'm going to leave this over here. Okay, so that's the basic things you have to understand. Font size, we talked about font size, we talked about color. Okay, So what else do you want to talk of? Let me go based on this. All right. I feel like those should be enough, but I would still talk about something else again. Sorry, 1 minute. I need to check up with something. Okay. Okay. So that is it for colors. So in case you want to change the font type, the way your font looks, okay. So there is a particular font here. So you want to change it. So the property we use is called the font property. The font family. Sorry. Okay. So let's change our paragraph tag. Okay. So let's change our paragraph tag. So I come down here and I said P curly brackets. Then I say font family. So down here, if you already know the font family specifically that you want, all you have to do is to write it down here. All right, you say maybe sans serif, you write it down here. But if you do not know which to use, you can use the ones VS Code suggests to you. There are so many it suggests to you. So I'm just going to use this one and I save it. Very soon we'll talk about how you can import fonts from other external sites like Google Fonts and the rest of them. So we are changing our paragraph. So you can see immediately that the paragraph font is now different from these other ones. Okay, it's not different from these other ones. And now notice something very significant. That what I had in mind to change was this paragraph. I wasn't considering this paragraph, right? I wanted to change this paragraph, so I wrote P. But now I can see that the effect has taken it has even affected this one as well. Okay, so that is one thing about tags. So when you add a style to a particular tag, it affects every element in your web page that is under that tag. So once you write a tag for H1, if there was a new H1, if I had to come down here and create a new H1 and I say new H1 and I save, going to my browser, it should have the same properties as this one, the same styling as this one. Okay, so that's one thing about using tags to style. Okay, so it is only when you want to consider every H1 or every tag to have that property, you use tag names. But if you just want it for um a specific or unique tag to have it, we now bring in two selectors we call class selectors and ID selectors. I will start with ID selector and I'll go to class selector. So ID selectors are basically for identity. So it means no two tags. Let me let me write it. Let me write it here. No two tags should share the same ID. All right. No two tags should share the same ID. What I mean is you can have an ID of paragraph here and have an ID of paragraph here. So if you're giving this an ID of paragraph, it should be the only ID paragraph in your web page. So I'm going to give this paragraph an ID. So how do you use it? So IDs are added to our sites as attributes. So you write ID. Okay, so it is here you now name the ID you want. So I want an ID of para. I like this. Every time I talk about ID, I always use para. So this is the ID I've given to this. All right, so it is like an identity. So now if I want to style ID in this place, notice that for tag names, you just wrote the tag name directly. But for IDs, I can't just come here and write para and start writing the name. Okay, it doesn't work like this. So for CSS selectors for an ID, you use hash before the name. CSS selector for CSS selector for ID. CSS selector for ID, use hash before the name of it. So now let's give this a different style. So let's say I want to increase the size. So I say font size. I want the font size to be 34 pixel, and then I want the color to be, let's say, brown. So it should only change for this. It shouldn't affect this other paragraph. So let's go to our site and see if it works. So we go down now. You can see that this one has a different font size and color, while the paragraph still retains its normal styling. So this is how you use CSS selectors for IDs. Okay, and for class, it is almost similar, almost the same thing. But the only difference is that for class, you can share a class name with different things. So you can come here and say you want to give this a class of heading, right? So you can use this same class name for this other element. Okay, so class doesn't restrict like heading does. Okay, so you create a class by using the class attributes, then you give it a value that you want, whatever value you want. So now for styling a class, you use the dot, then the name of the class, and the name is heading. Okay, so now let's say we want to give these ones is there a new one I can use? Okay, let's change their font size and their font weight. So font weight is basically for the thickness of a text, right? So we say we want to change the font. So if you don't know which font properties to use, you can just write font and you see the different properties out here. So you can choose which you want. So I want font weight. So we have from 100 to 200, 300, 400. We don't use pixels for font weight. So I want to use 900, which is the thickest. Okay, so I choose 900. So also I want to give this a color of pink. Do we have pink? Okay, let's take pink, and then we save. Make sure to save your HTML as well. So now we check out these headings, and they have this. So they have the same font weight and the same color, right? For class. So these are the different CSS selectors we use there. So before I continue, is there any question on this? The questions?
No.
There is a
Okay.
question. Oh, sorry. Okay, go first. Go first.
There's a question. Mr.
Yes,
Shani,
there
do
is
you
a
have a question?
question.
Okay, go on with your question.
Get back to the page, please.
Okay, which of them? The browser or the editor?
Not the browser, the
The
editor.
editor. Okay. Yes.
If we are saving on, we have to save at the both side before we can go to the browser. I mean, the browser, right?
Okay, so for you, you
Yeah.
won't have to open. I just have to open this so you can see it. So basically, whenever you make a change, you have to save it. All right. So for your VS Code, you don't have Lifesaver. So it means once you save your file here and you go to your browser, you also have to refresh your browser. So I have Lifesaver, and
Okay.
so that's why whenever I make a save in my changes here, it
Okay.
reflects here
Okay. Okay. I
automatically.
understand.
Yeah. So
I
you should
understand.
always refresh your browser. Yeah. So any other person with a
Okay.
question? Okay, no, I'll go on. Okay, so we're almost done with the concepts we want to learn to style this. So I want to talk of a very important concept right now, which is the box model. It is very important. So you can go for an interview and they can ask you to explain the box model. As simple as it sounds, as it seems, you might not get it if you're not prepared for it. So what I want to explain with box model is the idea that every tag, every element has a container around it. It is imaginary. You can't see it. So this hello world has a border around it. It has a container around it. So let's say this blue background, all right, is the container that's holding it. So it is inside. So how do you debug this box model? You go to your developers tool. I said you right click on your browser's page and you search for inspect. And then you go to inspect. And then the inspect should open up your developers tool environment where you can debug your your HTML structure or your CSS styling. And then you make the necessary change there. So let's read up a bit. Okay. So this is our developers tool. So the element side is for your HTML and CSS, while the console is basically where you debug JavaScript codes. So for HTML now, what you see here is the exact thing in your VS code. So whatever you write here in your VS code, that is what you would see here in this element, under this element. So you can now debug it by hovering on the element you want to debug. So I want to talk about this H1, right? So this is my H1 and I hover on it. So the moment I hover on it, you see an orange color at the top and the bottom, and then you see the content itself. It is covered in a blue color. So all it's telling you is that the blue place you see is the content. That means the content is what is between the opening and closing tag of your element. Hello world. This is the content, right? For now, this orange part you're seeing is a margin. Okay. So before I go down to what a margin is, I said every element has a container around it. Right now, this is the containers surrounding our H1. So this blue part is the content. All right. So that's where the container itself is at. All right. The content itself. Now between the content and the container holding it, if there's a space between the content and the container, which is let's say a border. Okay, so there's a border around it. So if there's a space between the content and the border, you can see from this line, this dashed line is the border, right? So the space between a border and the content is considered a paragraph. So when I hover on this, you don't see anything highlighted here. That's because currently our H1 doesn't have a padding. So it doesn't have a space between its content and the border. Okay, so it doesn't have, so it just has the content and has an imaginary border which you can't see for now. We'll talk on how to add borders and the rest of them. So after the border, the next thing you have is an end here. So after your border, the next thing is your margin. So margin is the space between the external parts of your border and any other content around it. So basically, the space between two things, between two different tags, is called referred to as a border. But the space between a content and its border is a padding. So let me give our content, our H1 a border so you can see it. It's done with the CSS. So we'll be introducing new properties. So we want our H1 to have a border. So you come down here and write border. So now for you to create a border, it takes basically three values. So one, it takes the width of the border, it takes the type of border, and it takes the color of the border. So let's say I want the width of the border to be 2 pixels. I'm done. Then I go to the next one, a space. Then I say I want the type of the border to be solid. So which means it should be a straight line, not dashed, not dotted. Okay, it should be solid, a straight line. So lastly, I have to specify the color of the border. So let's say I want a black border and I save my work. So going here, you see a border around your element. So from this, you can already see that there is something similar to this, okay? Although you need some styling to do it, but you can see you're already creating it. So now if I go on, you see the content, it doesn't have a padding, so you don't see anything. This is the border, and then this is the margin, okay? So now let's create a padding and see what the padding looks like. So for my H1, I want to give a space between the content and the border. Do not mind this small space here. Okay, it doesn't count as a padding. All right. So let's give it a space because as you can see, this is touching here directly. So to give a padding, you will come down and write padding. Okay. So now there are different ways to write a padding. So if I give it just one property and I say 20 pixel, remember size, the unit for size in CSS is pixel, REM, EM, or percentage. So I'm using PX for this tutorial sake. And you go here. So if you hover on your padding now, you see a green highlighted line there. So to show you that now you have a padding, you have a space between your content and the border itself. So right now we now have a space from here to here and round it. So that's a padding. Okay, and then this is a margin. So if you want to remove a margin or a padding, you just put 0. So this is the first way to create a padding, and as you can see here, we give it 20 pixels. So the top is 20, the right is 20, the bottom is 20, the left is 20 as well. That's for giving your padding one value. So it takes that value for top, right, bottom, and left. So if we give it two properties now, let's say we give it two different properties. What it does now is that it takes the first property for your top and your bottom, and it takes the second one for your right and your left. I would come again. So when you create padding and you give it two values, it takes the first value for your top and bottom, and it takes the next value for your right and your left. So if you save this and we go to our browser, so now we can see that the space here is different from the space here. So let me reduce this screen. The hello world is coming down because it can no longer contain this space. This space can no longer contain words. So if we increase our screen, it shifts back here. So now if you come here, you'll notice a difference in this, the padding here and the padding in the top and bottom. Okay, so you see the top and bottom remains 20, but the left and right remains 40. Okay, so that's what giving two values tell you about. So what if that is the second way to give a padding its values? So what if we try the third pattern? The third pattern is by giving it four different values. So let's say I start with 10 pixel, 20 pixel, and lastly 30 pixel. So what we are doing now is similar to both margin and padding. Take note of that. So what it does is that it takes 10 pixel to be top, it takes 20 pixel to be right, it takes 30 pixel to be bottom, and 40 pixel to be left. So it goes in a clockwise manner. And so if you go to your browser now and you hover on this, you notice the difference in thickness of each of the paddings in the different sides. The top is now small, the right is a little bit thicker than the top, the bottom is a little bit thicker than the latter, and the left is now bigger. So you can play around with this padding to get exactly what you want. So this basically explains the box model. So the box model is a combination of the margin, the border, and the padding. These three concepts, margin, border, and padding, is what we consider the box model. So you can tweak this to make your content look as good as you want and the rest of them. So I'm going to give a quick tip on how we can make or further make our borders look good, because from here we have a rounded border, but from here the edges look so sharp. So how do you do that? You use border radius to do that. So you come down, remember your border is for your H1. So you come down here and you say border radius. Okay, so now we can specify maybe 20 pixel to be the border radius. So let's see what we get. So the borders are now curved at a pixel of 20. Okay, so now you have your button. So this is how you make your buttons look good. So I can decide to just change this padding to maybe, let's say, 20 pixel. No, yeah, 20 or 30 pixel. Okay, so now we have our um our button here. So after explaining this, I can now close this part here so we see something. So we've been able to, so remember we said styling a tag affects all the tags. This is a H1 as well, so it has the same effect. Okay, and H1 is a block element, so it occupies the entire space. Okay, so now in Microsoft Word, when you type in Microsoft Word, by default the text are aligned to the left. All right, so you can use your in Microsoft Word, you can decide to align them to the right or align them to the center. So likewise here, as you can see, your H1 is aligned to the left. You can decide to align it to the center or align it to the right. So what do we use? Obviously, text align. So we can come down here and we say text align. So different options comes up. So you can see right. Okay. So once you use right, it moves this to the right, to the far right your of your container. So I'm going to use center for this. I'm just going to use center and I'm going to save. So now we have this. Okay. So this is how you do it. So for paragraphs, if you give this an align of center, it will align this to the centers. So basically, it's like you're writing your text from the center and it's expanding. So I'm going to do a quick example here by coming to this para and I say give it a text align of center. So now you see they're now aligned to the center. Okay, it's now aligned to the center. So sometimes based on a design, because mostly front end developers work with designers. For people that are very creative, for developers that are very creative, they don't need a designer to work on a design. So this is a design, so they can just create their design themselves and work on it. But for some people like me who are not very creative, we look for designs to work on, and so based on the design, you can choose which of the alignments to give to it. So if we change this to justify, this is what justify looks like. All right, so they are now is now equally at the left and at the right. Okay, it is not aligned to one particular place. It now justifies it properly along the screen. So that is what it is for. Okay, so the last things I'm going to talk about before we start working on this. Okay, so I talked about because right now currently our browser, our different navigations are stacked vertically, and we don't want that. We want to arrange them properly. Okay? But now they are stacked like this. Okay. So the reason is because this list items stands to be uh, block elements. And so if I go to inspect, if I open up my inspect, so notice when I hover on this image, this is our logo, which is this our logo. I hover on it, you see how it the blue content is just there. to just the space that the image takes. All right. But once I come down to our navigation, it highlights the entire width of the screen, tell you that an um, it is a block element. Likewise, the UL is a block element. The LIs are block elements as well. So what can we do to change this? So in CSS, there's a property we can use to change an element from being a block element to an inline element, and likewise an inline element to a block line element to a block element. And this property is called display. So from this we are using, so let's make H2 and H3. Let's make them inline elements. So all we have to do is to come to H2. So I could decide to do this. Come down here and I say for H2, I want to change the display. Don't forget. So I say display and I say it is a block element already. So what I want is I want to change it to an inline element. So if I only change H2 and I go back to my browser, I've changed it to H2, but it doesn't do anything. Okay. So if I go to inspect and I hover on the H2, you can see that it only highlights that space. But H3 is there. So I was expecting that H3 would come up to this side. But because H3 is still a block element, it wouldn't come there. It means I have to change H3. So how do I do that? I come down here and I say H3 and I change the display as well. And I change it from block to inline. So now if I go back to my code, you can see that they are now stacked side by side because they are now inline elements. So this is how you change a block line element to an inline element. So you can use that um, this idea to create this. Although there's a better way to do it, but since we're starting from the basics, it is only good that we understand how to change displays, how to change margins to get this. Okay, so when we finish making them using this display pattern, then we'll learn how we use the modernized way of arranging things because it's very easier and that way is flexbox. But for now, we are going to use this normal way we created it. So before we jump into working on our design, is there any question? Do we have any questions?
No.
No. Okay. So we will jump into our design. So I hope are we together with this design, our HTML structure. Do we all are we all here? Yes. We are not here. Okay. Okay. So from our folder, we don't have any CSS file. So we are going to create a CSS file. CSS. Okay. So remember, once you create a file, you have to link it here because currently it is not linked. And so now there is something we see here. Okay, this is internal CSS. There are three ways of writing CSS, but I refuse to mention them on purpose because they are not advisable. So there are three ways. There is the external way of creating a CSS file. There is the internal way of creating a CSS file, and there is the inline way of creating a CSS file. Okay. So inline is when you specify the line here. You come down here and you write style. Okay, and then you choose what you want to change. Maybe you want to choose the background color. You want to change the background color to something. Okay, this is inline element. You're writing it inline inside the tag, the opening tag, this is inline element, inline CSS style. Then if in your head, between your head section, you have style, and then you write your CSS inside here, considered an internal CSS. Okay, but this one we've been using is what we consider to be external CSS. So once you create an external CSS, you have to link it. So you come down here. Remember, as you can see, there's already a link file here, but this is not for us. This is a link that says real icon type image slash png size 32 by 32 href blah 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 blah. So this is the icon you see here. This icon you see here, that's the favicon. Okay, so that's so if for those of you that want to add images to your website, this is how we add an image to your website to the top of the description, right? Okay, so we want to create our own link for our CSS. So we have to come down. You can do it here or come after this title. So since there's already a link file, I'll come down here and I create my link and I choose CSS. Okay, so it creates my file for me. All I have to do now is save. So now I can go to my CSS to style. So you do it one after the other. From our design, what do we have to change? So this is the size of the logo, okay? And to me, it looks okay, but maybe I want to reduce this a little bit. Okay, I can reduce an image size. So let's reduce this. So look through, right? Are you going to have another image on your website? We created this using an IMG file. So we are definitely going to create this using an IMG file. So we don't want the property for this, the CSS property we're going to write for this to be affecting this one as well. So it is better we give this one maybe a class or an ID and give this one its own class and ID too, so that the style for this doesn't affect this. So this is how you choose which CSS selector to use, either a tag name, a class name, or an ID. So I'm going to give this a class. So I'm going to give image. This is the image, all right? It is inside this container. I'm going to give this image a class of logo. So I'm using logo because it is descriptive. Okay, so somebody can just look at my CSS and know that I'm writing a style for logo. So I come to my style.css and I write .logo. So what do I want to change? So what I want to change is the one we have on our browser looks to be too big. It could be, maybe it's not too big. Okay, so definitely it's not too big. But I just want to show us how we use width. So it could be too big, so we want to change the width. So we can say give this a width of, let's say, 300 pixels, and we save. So going back, we see how big it has turned. All right. So mind you, it is advisable you change one property of an image. You don't just change two. I mean the width and the height. You don't just change them together, because I've given this a height of 300 and a width of 300 pixels, which means it is fixed to 300 pixels. If I have to go and adjust the height as well, it could distort our image. So if I give this a height of, let's say, 400 pixels, so it has to adjust the width to be 300 pixels and the height to be 300 pixels. So if we go back to our code, we see now that it looks ugly because it's trying to um, balance the width to be 300 pixels while the height is 400 pixels. You don't want this. So it's either you choose one, it's either you just go with the width or the height, okay, at based on what you're trying to design anyways. Okay, so there might be situations where you have to change the width and the height. So I don't want this. I feel like it's small already. So I'm going to remove that. So that was just to show us how to style our image. So we have this. Okay. So the next thing is I can see a space here, all right, and a space on this left side. Okay. So it means our parent container, the parent container holding this. Okay, it has a padding. It has a padding inside it. I don't know if I still have design. let me open up this other design so I can style it. I'm going to open this up with Paint 3D. Okay, so this is our this area is the header, right? So let's give the header a padding. And from this, you can see that the padding at the left looks to be bigger than the one at the top. So you can go to your HTML. Okay, so the header is going to be the only header. This header is going to be the only header you have in your page. So I don't need to worry about using CSS or using class or ID. I just go straight up to my CSS and I choose the header tag. And I say, give this a padding. So I want the top and bottom to be the same. So let's say 40 pixels for top and bottom. And then I want the left and right to be ×2 of the top and bottom. So I use 40 pixel, 80 pixel. So here now I have my space. As you can hover on it, you can see a space there. Okay, so that is good. So we are done with the spacing. If the spacing looks to be too big, we can reduce it further as we go on. So now the next thing is, and this image is in the right side. So what I want to do next is I want these navigations to be on a straight line like this. As you can see from here, for now they are placed vertically. So what I can do to this is that we would have to go through series of things. We have to test one after the other. We start with them individually. We start by making, remember your anchor tags are not block elements. Your list items are the block elements. So we start by making the list items inline elements. And if it doesn't work, we'll make the UL. If it doesn't work, we'll go up to the nav. So by the time we finish all of this, it should work. So how do you do that? You go to the style. You start with the LI. I'm going to choose a different way of selecting something. So you start with the LI and then you say change the display to inline. So it works for us, and so that is fine. So you don't have to change the UL and the nav anymore. Okay. So it's already working for us, and this is perfect. This is what we want. This is good. Okay. So as you can see, I used LI. So there is a different way. I can decide to say I want to go from nav to UL to LI. All right. So basically, let's say I want to style these anchor tags. All right, that in a LI. I don't want these other anchor tags to be affected. I only want anchor tags in this. Okay. And so the basic difference between this anchor tag and this anchor tag is that these anchor tags are inside a list item, while these ones are not. Okay, so I can use that leverage. I can just come down here and I can see inside the LI, select all the anchor tags. That's what this means. Okay. So inside where you see LI, select all the anchor tags. And then this property I want to write should only affect them. Okay. So you can go on to change the color to maybe black. And if you do that, you can see that these list items are now black, but these ones remain their normal color. Okay. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this, but let's hold on for now. Okay. So we finally made the LIs to be horizontal to each other, but we also want them as a group to be horizontal to this image. And as you can see right now, the LIs are inline, but this UL is block. Likewise, our nav is block. So let's go to the UL and make UL an inline element as well. So this is how you follow it step by step. You don't rush, you just do it step by step. So do you want to change the display, obviously, to inline? So you check it out. If it works, there's no need. Okay. So it works, but it doesn't work completely. It works in the sense that it removes it removes, let me comment this out. It works in the sense that by default, a URL has a margin and a padding left by default. Okay. So once you make it an inline, you see that the space there was reduced. Okay. So now if you go back, you see that the margin top and bottom is out, but the padding left is still there. So to remove it, you cannot say padding 0 and it takes the padding off. Okay. So now we have this, but we still want it to be on this line. So it means we have to change this nav as well to an inline element. So we come down here and we say nav should be display of inline. And we go, voila, we have it on a straight line as our image. Okay, we have it on a straight line as our image. So now another thing we want to do is this part. But we can say let's finish with this first. So it has a certain font size, it has a certain font color, right? And also it is horizontal. It is somewhat horizontal to this. Okay. It is somewhat horizontal. So we can use a couple of things, but first let's change the colors. So the what is giving this color is not the list item, it is not the UL, but it is the link tag itself. So by default, a link tag gives you this color and this underline. So to remove this underline, we use a property called text decoration. So we go to our code and say you want it for all the list items, all the links rather. So all the links you want to remove their text decoration. So you say text decoration should be none, and you save it. So the moment you do, you have them coming up like this. Is now the underline is now out. So you can now change the color to this. Okay. And from our CSS guide, from our code, there's a style guide that gives us colors we can use. So there's an almost white, there's a medium gray, and almost black. I am convinced that what we need to use is almost gray. So HSL is a different way of creating colors. So I can just copy this out. And down here, I can say I want to change the color to this. And now you can see the color is the way it should be. So all I have to do next is probably change the font size, the font type, and the font, maybe the width. I can try to increase the width. So how do you do that? Say the font family, remember, font family. So let's use this. So there's a font family they gave to us here, but we have to import it. Okay, we are not there yet. So let's just leave it for now. Let's just use inside internal the machine text we have. So immediately it changes. So now I have to let me increase the width a little bit. And I say give it a font width of bold. Maybe increase it to 500. Medium is enough. Yeah, so this should look good. This should look good. Okay. So what we need next to do is that we need a space between them. Okay. So this arrow down you see here is done with an icon. So you can use an image to make this. So this would be maybe probably you want to go on because you have a long week before the next class. You can just want to try it out and put an image on its own. So I won't do it for you. You have to do it on your own and improve your skills. So let's say I want to give a space between them. All right. And we talked about the space between one element and another element to be a margin. Okay. So I can just say, okay, I want to give each of the LIs a margin right. So I don't want to give it a margin top or bottom or left. I want just this right part to have a margin. So there should be a margin here. There should be a margin here. There should be a margin here. And also there will be another margin here. Okay, you won't see it. So all I have to do is go down here. Remember, this is my code. For now, these are the only LIs I have. But it is very possible that I might be creating another list item in this page. So I shouldn't use that correct. I shouldn't use the LI directly. So I'm just going to create a class here. I'm just going to select each of these list items and create a class. I'll give them the same class name. So I'll say nav list. So you can see that is descriptive. All right. So if somebody sees nav list in CSS, they understand what is having that class. So now I come down to my CSS and I say nav list should have a margin of right. So I can specify whatever I want, 30 pixels. We are supposed to see something. Okay. So now we get it out here for us. Okay. So we now have it spaced out. Now spaced. Okay. So what else is remaining? Okay, all that is remaining is to align it to the center. We will do that, okay, but not yet. So I want this to be moved this way as well. Okay, so we get this picture before we do whatever I want to do to analyze on that. So we have to move this one to this side. So first thing first, remember that they are still bottom. So if you highlight on them, you can see that they're occupying this entire space. Okay, and what is holding them is this div. So it is this div that is causing it. So I have to make this div an inline element. So I come to my page, and for sure we already have a div here, so I can't go to CSS and start styling div. So I can come here and say give it a class. Okay, and I can say nav buttons. Okay, with that said, I now go to my CSS and style them specifically by saying nav buttons. And I want to make the display inline. Okay, so we have it to be inline, but it still isn't going there. Okay, so the reason is this. So now we are having a bug. Okay, so we made this inline, but it still isn't going to where it's supposed to go to. So if you hover on it, you see that it's now an inline element. But now this div above it is a block element, and that div is this div here. So it means you have to make this a an inline element as well. So let's give this a class and say I'm running out of names for class. So let's say we have nav. Okay, let me say nav logo. Nav logo section. Let me use the same dash we've been using instead of using this other one. Okay, so we go to CSS and we say .nav logo .section. Now we make it a display of inline. So now we have everything on a straight line. So what we want is that this should be on the far end. So the space between these people and this one should push this one to the far end. Okay. So we can easily do that by giving this one a margin left. So by giving it a space, a margin left here, we can push this to the end. So let's try something. So remember the div is nav buttons. So inside here, I can now say give it a margin left. So how do we know just how much left it has to go? You can just start to guess. Let's say we go 50 pixels. You see that it moves 50 pixels, but we can't really get this exact one. Okay, so let's try auto and see what it does, and I will explain. Okay, so even auto doesn't work because it's supposed to push them to the last side, so it doesn't work. So how do we get it to move down to the last side? Can hover on it and let's see that it doesn't look, it doesn't, we don't see a way. So let's try giving this one a margin right of auto and let's see if it will push it down. Or we can decide to align this one to the far right of it by saying self align, the align, the items align items, or align self to, okay. Let's see, we have center, we have flex, and this is for flex, self flex, self, and none of this is doing what we want it to do. None of these can do what we want it to do. Or what looks almost similar is this self end, but it doesn't look like it can do it. And to go, it doesn't change anything. So I'm going to introduce a new concept. Okay. So let me take these two off. It doesn't work, so we're going to try a new concept. So the concept I want to bring up now is called display flex. Okay. So flex box is a way we can easily flex each of our items to move either left, right, center, middle, or either way. Okay. So currently, what we want is we want to put it in the parent container holding this section and this section because I want a space between this and this section. Okay. And if I start closing this one after the other, our nav. So while we have this div as well. So basically the space should be between this and this. All right. And the parent container housing these two containers is the header. So it means I should make the header a display of flex, not inline, not block, but a display of flex. So I will explain how we use it to arrange it today, and we'll go deeper into flex in our next class. So it means I have to go back to my header, and here I change the display to flex. So that is only the first step. Because if I save, it shouldn't do much. That's just the first step. Okay. So now that I have saved it, I want to specify how much space should be between the two contents. And as you can see, it already moved this up. Okay, it's already somewhat aligning it to the rates, although it is not aligned properly. So I want a space between the two flex items inside. Okay. So the way we arrange the items inside a flex box is in two ways. We arrange them horizontally and vertically. What we use to arrange them vertically is align items. What we use to arrange them horizontally is justify items. So right now I want horizontal arrangement or alignment of these things. So I go still in my header, and here I change the display to flex. So that is the first step. Okay. So now that I have saved it, I want to specify how much space should be between the two contents. And as you can see, it already moved this up. Okay, it's already aligned somewhat to the rates, although it is not aligned properly. So I want a space between the two flex items inside. Okay. So the way we arrange the items and I say I want you to justify the content inside this header. So there are different options. There's baseline, there's center, there's end, flex, and start. So it will do you good if you does practice with each of these. Okay. So what I want is I want a space between the two containers. Okay. And from here I can see that there's a space between, and it says flex items are evenly distributed in line. So let me choose that one. And I say space between, and let's check. So immediately I do that, it moves this one to the far end and moves this one and gives an even space here. So if I hover on my header, I can see that there is no space. There is no space between here, all right, and the border of it, and also here. It moves them and keeps a space between them. That's what flex does for us. Okay. So align items does it vertically. So they don't look to be aligned vertically. So I can just say, I can just write out. It could be that they align vertically, but it doesn't look like that to me. So I can say align items, and I want center to be centered properly. Now, if I hover, yes, if I hover, this login has moved down. Okay. So now just one thing remaining. Okay, couple of things remaining actually. This one should move to the center as well. And from what I've explained, it means you have to make this container a flex box, and then you align items to the center. So easy to do. So all that is remaining is to align this one, and then we arrange these buttons to look exactly like this. So let's do this first, and then we'll go on to this. So check for the container holding it again. So using this, we go down to nav and UL. So let's give nav a display of flex and see what happens. No, that won't fix it. So what that will do is to just fix the nav items. What I want is I want this container holding the image and the navigations to be aligned to the center themselves. Okay, so you have to analyze this properly. You have to analyze the structure properly, otherwise you would go wrong. Okay, you might be writing the correct CSS code, but it's not really affecting the changes you want it to do. So you have to analyze it to understand. So this is the parent code holding two of them. So this div nav logo section. So now you can go to the CSS, successfully write your code by coming here. So instead of display inline, you can change it to flex. You can't have two. You can write display inline, come down and write display flex. You should choose one. Okay. So right now I'm going to choose the flex and take this out. So after making it flexed, it will still be the way it should be, horizontal. All right. And now it is now placed vertically for you. So this might not look vertical to you. If it doesn't, if you're trying it out and it doesn't look vertical to you, you can come down and say align items and choose center. I go back to your code and check it out. Okay, so it looks good to you now. You can leave it. So, but if it doesn't change anything, you have to go back to your code and take it out. Because if a line of code doesn't make any difference to your code, there is basically no need having it on your code. All right, it's not useful. So there's no need writing it. You just clean it up. So we are almost done. The last thing remaining is this part. So what I want is that I want a space between this and this, and I want this to have a border around this. Give this a margin left, okay, or I can give this a margin right. One of them, I have to choose one of them. Is either I give this a margin left, a margin right, or I give this a margin left. It should do the same thing. Then this one should have a padding. So since I'm going to edit this one further by giving it a padding and a border, I'm going to give this a padding, a margin left instead. So I go to my code and I need to give this a class. Let's give this a class of register. And our CSS will come down here and we say dot register. So now we give it a margin left. So what margin left does is that we talked about margin before, okay? But this one, it gives the margin only to the left side. So I can choose a margin left and say 30 pixel. If you check it up, it gives a space now. So it has a margin left, okay? There's no margin right. Let's check and confirm. So if I check on this, it has an orange only at the left side to let you know that it has a margin left, but there's no margin right, which is what I want, which is good. So all that is remaining now is to give it a padding of its own and then a border. So I'm going to give it a border, all right, give it a border radius. I'm going to give it a padding. So still on this same code, I come down here and I say I want a border of, let's start with 1 pixel, and we say it should be solid, and let's use, is it the same color? It's not the same color. Okay, looks like the same color. So we're going to use the same color we used. Where is it? Yes, here. We're going to use that color here. Control V. So this gives us our border of 1 pixel solid. All right. But we need a padding in it. So you can adjust the padding to look like what you want it to look. So it looks like the left and right is bigger than the top and bottom. So I'm going to give this, I'm going to start by guessing. Maybe let's say we give this 15 and we give this probably 10 or 8. Okay, and then we just keep adjusting it to get what we want. So I want the top and bottom to be 8 pixel, and then the left and right to be 15 pixel. So you go and check your code. Okay, it's looking good, but it looks like the top and bottom looks very big. Okay, so we can further reduce it to 6 or thereabouts. Let's just give it, let's try 5. If 5 doesn't work, we change it to 6. Okay, 5 doesn't, it looks to me like the register is coming down than it should. Okay, it looks to me like the register is coming down than it should. So what I can do here is I can make this anchor tag a flex box and align it to the center. Okay, I don't know if you get my point. So if I come here, it looks like the register moves down a little bit, but I want it to be directly exactly at the center of it. But let's give this a border first before we continue. So after giving that, we say I want a border radius of 3 pixel. Okay, it's not curved properly. I want to be able to see the edge, so I have to edit this up to, let's say, 8 pixel. Okay, I think this is good. So like I said, the register looks to come down a little bit. So I can decide to make this a flex box and then um, justify this to the center and align it to the center. So how do I do that? Still in this register. So basically you can make anything a flex box, so long as you want to align something, all right? So I can say the display should be flex, um, align items should be center, and then justify content should be center. So I'm just using all of the properties. And so if it doesn't work, then we know it's a problem. Okay, so now we did this, we're now having a problem. This is now coming down. This is now coming down because the width can no longer contain it. So what we can do is to increase the width of this nav button. So we can decide to increase the width of the nav button. So if you come to nav button, you can see it should take a width of, let's say, 100 pixel, and check out if it works. Hundred pixel doesn't do it, so we can further increase it to, let's see, 200. Oh, nav button is only affecting this one. Okay, so what we are doing is actually not giving us the required input. So we can just decide to go back to our default. We can just decide to go back to our default and use the button like this. So let's take this out. Display. Okay, so we can leave this here, and from this, we can now close this down, and we now have a similar design to what we have here. So basically, this is how we create our header section for our desktop view. So we are done with the header. So um, let's take the questions now before we move on. I'm very sure there are questions. The questions, are we there? Is anyone
Yes.
is anyone go? Okay, do you have any questions so far?
No, no, no.
Are you sure you get it?
Yes.
Okay. Miriam and Mr. Sunny.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, we are done. Okay, you do. All right. So we are done with the header section of our website. So it means from our next class, we'd have to work on this. So what you would have to do is this. Um, this video is on record, so would send the videos to you guys after you're done. You can decide to watch it, and can decide to watch it again and try to grab the concepts. Maybe you forgot any concept, okay, and work on it. You have, I think the next class should be either Friday or Saturday. The office will contact you guys to let you know when the next class is. So you have at least 4 days till the next class. So I would say you work on this as many times as possible until you can actually clean everything up and write it from scratch again by yourself without looking at my video or code or anything. So until you're comfortable that you can write it properly without looking at anywhere, that's when you stop. Okay, so that would be more of the homework you'll be working on. Right. So that would be basically everything for me today. So you said there is no more questions, right? I'm going to end the recording.
Yeah, Mr. Felix.